And then
Asian American, thoughts on gods being archetypes for the human psyche.
I mean, they are.
Yeah.
They are, but yes and no. Okay. So we have gods, we have demons, we have heroes and prophets, and we have Mother Nature type archetypes, right? So gods are archetypes usually for human psyche and also society, right? Heroes and prophets, mostly heroes, they are archetypes for people, okay? Demons, rebels, villains, um, they are usually archetypes for us. So it's not just the gods that are archetypes for human psyche. We rebels and people who you're supposed to be against in society are also being represented in the form of the devil or demons or villains in stories as well, right? And that's why I think like one thing I'm interested in doing is to see if we could own it, right? So mythology, a lot of people like make it seem like people like Jordan Peterson make it seem like mythology is a set thing that is supposed to be interpreted this way, and this is what it means. But mythologies and stories are there for us to play with however we want. And not only you could play with it however you want, you could also put your own spin on it, right? I mean, these stories are not like people like Jordan Peterson make it seem like there's something within the fabric of society and nature that these mythologies are like are speaking to it, and it's like hard coded within the nature of how things are. And if you look into these myths, you will understand the way things are supposed to be like, right?
Which is so absurd to like think of like a narrative, like an objectivity to the narrative.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think one thing we're highlighting with our next art is how this backfired on Jordan Peterson, because if you think about it, in modern in modern mythology, what is modern mythology? Modern mythology is Harry Potter, Marvel, DC. This is like the modern here. Marvel's superheroes are the pantheon of our time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at what happened recently, Jordan Peterson was represented as Red Skull by Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? Which is, and I know, like, we obviously that guy is ridiculous and all.
We're not a fan.
We're not a fan. However, modern society has determined that he has a say in how modern myth is being created, right?
God help us.
And what does it say about the fact that Jordan Peterson in modern myth making, the modern myth making machine has determined him to be what the version of devil in modern mythology, which is Red Skull, right? So maybe Jordan Peterson has to re-examine how much value he puts in to the reality of myth, because what does he think? He thinks like the people who were writing the myths in ancient times, that they knew more about myth making and they did it more properly than the people that are doing it right today. So if he thinks that it's not fair for him to be represented as Red Skull in modern myths, shouldn't that suggest to him that maybe he shouldn't take it as gospel? I mean, gospel being myth itself, that the people who wrote the myths in ancient times, that they're all onto something that is absolutely correct, right? I mean, myths, we're not dismissing myths as a valuable source of information about a human psyche. We just think like it's a bias source of a biased look into what society says about us. But the bias, we're not saying that it's bias as in like you should dismiss it. The bias is telling, right? The bias is actually valuable for us as a source of information. So we're like saying, don't just trust myth as an understanding of how society is supposed to be. Use it as a way to understand how people want society to be reflected, and what they're against. Because one thing that I learned from Katie is, like, if you look at Zoroastrians versus Hindu mythology, it seems like the demons of Zoroastrians are the gods of Hindus, and the demons of Hindus are the gods of Zoroastrians. So, it just depends on your perspective. Again, this is valuable information because we're interested in people's perspective with their biases. And we have to understand that what the myth tells us about the human psyche is not that, we need to follow these truths about how society is supposed to operate. What myth tells us is what was these people's understanding of how society is supposed to be, not how it's supposed to be. In fact, because of this flexibility of myth, and because of how much information we could get out of societies from myth, we want to show how flexible this is by taking the demons of these myths and associating with them. We could say, like, well, the devils and the demons are supposed to represent the psyche of the rebels, the people you're supposed to avoid, the blasphemers, the ex-Muslims, the rebels, the revolutionaries, the people, the troublemakers, and we be the troublemakers. So those are the devils and the demons. The devils and the demons, there are people, right? So we could take those stories and we could put our own spin to it and own it, right? But to answer the question a little bit more, is that, so we have heroes, we have the demons, we have the gods, and we have nature is also represented in myth, either positively or negatively, right? So if you have, like, beautiful goddesses, you have Gaia, you have other goddesses that represent nature when it comes to the gifts of nature, right? The positive aspect of nature, recognizing that the sun and the land, they provide for you and they keep us alive. But you also have the harshness of nature and the negative aspects of it, the fact that sometimes nature seems to be trying to kill you. That's also represented in myth, in forms of flood, in form of witches, right? So that's also has its own representation in mythology as well. But go on.
They be trying to kill you. Well, I like to call us, meaning the two of us specifically, we're not just demons and rebels. We're trouble monkeys.
Trouble monkeys. Wait, what was that? We're the Monkey King. I mean, Trouble Monkey. Yeah, Trouble Monkey. That's the very definition of the Monkey King in Chinese mythology. Trouble is the Trouble Monkey, and the Monkey King represents the rebellious side of human nature, and in that story, it's represented somewhat positively, right? So it's kind of the fun aspect of being rebellious. It's very interesting because the Monkey King, which is the rebellious side of human nature, is portrayed somewhat positively and entertaining and comedically in opposite, in Chinese mythology. And that's also the mythology that made the dragon the force for good. In almost all other mythologies, you look at your, Norse mythology, Persian mythology, Abrahamic mythology, the reptile, the snake, the dragon is the evil. And then you go to China and the dragon becomes the source of good and power and, like, goodness and all of that. So it's so amazing that how these narratives change.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of blasphemy and sexy Callie, like me, then you need to be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, link in the description below. Because if you subscribe, we will send you a free copy of our Blasphemous Art ebook. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest blasphemy that you can find anywhere available today. And we are so generous with our blasphemy that we continue to send you more blasphemy every week. So make sure to subscribe, link in the description below.